Children, now let's start with a very important topic from this chapter. This is the menstrual cycle. Okay, almost every alternate year a 3-mark question comes from this. Now let's start with this. You know the meaning of the term menarche. We have done it before. The beginning of the first menstrual cycle in a female after attaining puberty is called menarche. Menopause, at around the age of 50, what happens is the menstrual cycle stops permanently. This phase is called menopause. In between the menarche and the menopause is a female undergoes a periodic phenomena of 28 days each, a cycle of 28 days, and this is called menstrual cycle. And menstrual cycle is a time, children, when the menstrual cycle is going on, then the female is capable of reproduction also. So difference between menarche and menopause is very commonly asked in the exam. Come to the next one, the menstrual cycle. Now these phases of menstrual cycle, children, the menstrual cycle consists of 4 phases. We did it in class 10th also, but here now we will do it a little in detail. I have already posted the notes of menstrual cycle on your PCR also. So see the first phase, children. The first phase is menstrual phase. Now this menstrual phase starts with day 1 to day 5. So the moment the girl experiences a menstrual flow, that is the first day, and this continues for 5 days. Now during this menstrual phase, children, what is happening? Do you remember I told you the innermost lining of the uterus is called endometrium. So during this phase, what is happening is that the endometrium is locked off. What do you mean by locked off? It is broken, but it doesn't get broken instantly, but bit by bit, it like a soil is eroded. In the same way, the corrosion of endometrium takes place. As a result, the female experiences the discharge of blood. Now, this phase occurs only, children, when there is no fertilization. During this phase, children, one important thing is that the level of progesterone is very low and the level of estrogen is very high. Let's come to the next phase. The next phase is follicular phase. This follicular phase, children, why we are using the word follicular phase? Because this is the phase during which the graphene follicle, it really shows great development. Okay, this occurs from day 5 to day 15. Now this phase is also called post-menstrual phase. Why are we using the word post-menstrual phase, children? Because this phase occurs after menstruation. This phase is also called, children, proliferative phase. What do you mean by proliferative phase, children? Proliferate means anything that is developing. So what is developing over here? The graphene follicle. Children, mark this phase as very important. The reason why is because this is very frequently asked in the exam. For the exam purpose, children, you should know all the names of all the three alternative terms. They can ask you in any way. So if you are not learning all the 3 terms, you will not be able to decipher what you are supposed to write. So what happens during the follicular phase, children? First is the graphene follicle is maturing. So primary follicle, it develops and forms graphene follicle. Simultaneously, what is happening is the endometrium, it becomes 3 to 5 millimeter thick. The level of FSH and estrogen is high. Why? Because the graphene follicle is developing, so level of estrogen is maximum at this time. Then, children, there is one endometrial glands. Now these endometrial glands, they elongate and become corkscrew shape. Now this is a very important feature. Mucus becomes thin. And what is happening? The primary oocyte finishes meiosis 1 and it becomes secondary oocyte with a polar body. Again, I am repeating the same thing, children. When ovulation occurs, ovulation always occurs when the condition is in secondary oocyte. Ovum is not formed at that time. Then endometrial wall of uterus regenerates. Why? Because How does it regenerating? I just told you that the endometrium becomes 3 to 5 millimeter thick. Mark this phase as very important, children. Come to the third phase. In follicular phase, the release of FSH and LH increases. I told you, not LH but FSH more, and the developing follicles, they produce estrogen. Now, as the follicle goes on increasing, what will happen is the level of FSH goes on decreasing, the level of estrogen goes on increasing. Now, this is the signal for the third stage. And what is the third stage called, children? Ovulatory phase. Now, this ovulatory phase occurs from 13th to 14th day. Now, during this phase, what happens is the graphene follicles, they rupture to release the ovum. But it is not ovum, children. Again, I am repeating. We say it is ovum, but basically it is a secondary oocyte. Okay. Now, this release, the rupture, the ovulation is controlled by a hormone. Which hormone? LH. LH stands for luteinizing hormone. The empty graphene follicle, it forms corpus luteum, that you know, it's a yellow colored body. And corpus luteum plays a significant role. Why? Because it produces the hormone progesterone that maintains pregnancy for the first 3 months. Okay. So, with ovulatory phase, children, they never ask you. Then comes the luteal phase. Mark this phase as important, children. So, board can ask you 2 questions. Either it is ovulatory phase, either it is the follicular phase or it is the luteal phase. Now, why we are using the word luteal phase, children? The luteal phase, we are using the word luteal phase because it helps, because in this phase, corpus luteum plays a very important role. Now, this phase is also called secretory phase. Now, why is it called secretory phase? Because that endometrial gland that I told you, which develops during the follicular phase, they become very active. And they start producing some nutritional fluid. That is why they are called, it is also called secretory phase. Then, this is also called, children, post-ovulatory phase. Now, why post-ovulatory phase? Because this occurs after ovulation. And this phase is also called premenstrual phase. Why? Because after this phase, the menstrual cycle starts. The menstrual phase starts. Now, what happens during the luteal phase? The graphene follicle, it converts into corpus luteum, and corpus luteum starts producing progesterone. I told you before also, progesterone helps in the maintenance of endometrium. Endometrium is important, children. Progesterone is important because it is called pregnancy hormone. Why it is called pregnancy hormone? Because the first 3 months of pregnancy is being controlled by the progesterone that is secreted by endometrium. The uterine glands, children, they become corkscrew shaped, they produce nutritional fluid, and I told you that is why this stage is also called secretory phase. The endometrium again becomes thicker because it is anticipating implantation. Uterine movements are reduced. Now, after this phase, if you see, children, this is for 14 days. So, there are 2 reasons, it splits into 2 parts. The first 7 days, that is from 14 to 21 days, the corpus luteum keeps on waiting for the ovum to come, and it takes 7 days for the ovum to reach up to the uterus. Now, if that ovum is fertilized, implantation occurs. If that ovum is not fertilized, the unfertilized ovum is thrown out of the body. And during this stage, what happens is the corpus luteum, it forms corpus albicans. And this corpus albicans, children, this does not produce progesterone. And that is a signal when the corpus luteum starts degenerating, the level of progesterone decreases, and this is a signal for the formation of a new menstrual cycle. Got it, children? So, just mark down these 2 phases. First is the luteal phase, second is the follicular phase. It is important for exam.